When I was 15 years old, it was time to embark on a new stage in my school career, and that was called GCSEs, the first stage in specialising. One of the subjects I'd chosen to take was called ICT, Information Communication Technology. In other words, computers. However, at the last possible moment, way after the deadline had passed, I suddenly realised that it would be my last chance to pursue a subject which had engrossed me from my bedroom for more than a year, but which I had absolutely no formal training in whatsoever. And that subject was, of course, music. That's what I like to see. Cows safely on the other side of the fence. This is a textbook Salisbury Organist footpath. It's quiet, there's no rough terrain, and it's shielded by trees, so I don't have to wear my sunglasses. Today is a beautiful day and I'm heading to a church called St. Peter and St. Paul in Longbridge, Deverell. Believe it or not, today is about technology. And let's start from my musical beginnings, shall we? You'd think that maybe I was a chorister and then transferred to playing the church organ that way, but you'd be wrong actually. The way things started out was that my parents said to me, "What do you want for Christmas?" when I was about 13 or 14. And I was shrugged and they said, "Do you want a keyboard?" And I confidently said, "No, not really." But they got me one anyway. And that's where it all began. I had a strange obsession with this tiny electronic keyboard. And from there, my obsession grew to incorporate something called a synthesizer, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It creates sounds, all different kinds of sounds. The possibilities are endless. It's a fascinating kind of keyboard instrument. And from there came the organ, because the organ is really a big primitive synthesizer. And my task today is to prove that to you. What a smart church. This is one of those amazing autumnal mornings where you wake up to frost and damp grass, but soon enough the sun wipes it all away and we feel like we're back in summer. Wow, I was not expecting that. A roar almost loud enough to wake the dead in their graves. Unfortunately, as hard as we try to escape modernity, it is unfortunately impossible. Hopefully we'll find more peace inside this church. there's a great irony in the quality of these churches that I love the most. And that is that despite being buildings for public use, I love the fact that you can come in and reliably you will not see anybody. Complete silence. Only the echo of my own voice. This is a splendid church. Worth actually looking at the altar stone. This church was consecrated by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas à Becket, in the 1100s, and legend has it that there are 5 crosses which he personally cut into it. And that in the times of Cromwell, the altar stone had to be hidden. Nobody knew where it was until the 1800s, when it was discovered buried under the church path and returned to its rightful place. This is a really interesting church, but the thing which interests me most is, of course, the pipe organ. And the reason this looks so imposing is because it faces right out into the church where it should be. Do you remember last week's church, which is actually just round the corner? The Willis organ in the transept at Horningsham, which pointed inwards. Well, you don't get brilliant sound projection like that, but if you put the instrument here at the west end facing into the church, not only is it louder, but also if you're playing it, you can see what's going on, even if you have to use a mirror. I'm sure there is a mirror here. Yeah, there is. You can just see inside the console there's a mirror so that the organist can see what's going on behind them. For example, at the beginning of a service, you need to know when to stop playing. Normally the vicar would give you a sign. So the mirror and the positioning of the organ really helps. Anyway, this is an organ which is built by Peter Conacher from Huddersfield, supposedly. There seemed to be somewhere in the records which said it was a William Sweetland organ, but it says Peter Conacher on the console. I wonder if this says Sweetland. I can't read that. And it says, this tablet was placed here in happy and grateful memory of Clarence Septimus White, organist of this parish from 1927 to 1959. What a fantastic name. Let's see how it sounds. Believe it or not, this organ is tiny compared to what many organists are used to. It won't play you Widor's toccata, but it will certainly do a splendid job of a good old-fashioned hymn. As you're listening, notice the way I change the stops between the verses. Stops are the organ's mechanism for changing the sound, and they have to be mastered in addition to playing with your hands and your feet. This organ works fine, but there is one key issue with its mechanics. Okay, so a really good organ, a fantastic acoustic in here, but one massive problem, I'm afraid, and that is a sticking note in the bass. It's really disappointing, because it means you can't use the bass notes. I was actually using my feet because it's more comfortable for me. All I did was couple the keyboard down to the pedals so that it's easier for me to play, so that there's less for my hands to do. But unfortunately, when it comes to getting a really good bassy, powerful sound out of this organ, no hope. Unless we play fuller chords in the hands, play a bit lower in the hands, or as you may have seen, double up the pedals just to get a bit more power down there. Unfortunately, my favourite part of this organ is unusable here. However, it doesn't really matter, because what I wanted to show you on this organ was the way in which this instrument, and any pipe organ like this, really resembles a primitive kind of synthesizer. And the way to show you that is simply to demonstrate the different stops. Where a synthesizer fabricates sounds from scratch by manipulating waveforms, an organ is made of pipes built from different materials, in different shapes and sizes, and these characteristics give the pipe its particular tone. Then it's up to the organist to choose what kind of sound they want by engaging the pipes using the stops. There's no shortage of examples of this on my channel. In fact, I've played the entire church year twice over in more than 100 videos. So if you don't mind, I'd like to try something slightly different. People watch these videos for different reasons. Some for the countryside, some for the churches, and others for a glimpse of our history and our heritage. But for me, it's always been about music. I have no doubt that village church organs play an essential role, but I think they could be used more creatively. This is me at home, recording a new piece fresh from today's visit. Sometimes I prefer to use the organ as inspiration, rather than a performance instrument in itself. And it's often impossible to capture the mood in a short time with just hymns and simple organ voluntaries. So instead, I sketch out some new music at the console, inspired by the organ's own stops, and I bring it home to finish. The instrument you're listening to is a hybrid between a pipe organ and a synthesizer. It has organ stops and organ sounds, but instead of these sounds being created by sampling a real church organ, they are made by producing the same waveforms which a pipe organ builder synthesized using metal and wood. If that all sounds terribly modern to you, then do remember that pipe organs themselves are very modern in the context of a church's 1,000-year history, perhaps post 1850. In fact, where the organ now stands at St. Peter and St. Paul, there was a West Gallery where historically musicians would have performed for the services in a more community-based approach. That West Gallery was taken down to make way for the pipe organ. Looking at it a different way, church architects have always tried to emulate the styles of their predecessors. That's what Gothic revival means. And as one vicar rather smartly put it to me once, if we want our church building to remain original, well then we should knock 3/4 of it down. The point I'm making here is that instruments like this are in no way imposters. On the contrary, they open up completely new ways of working, especially if, like me, you grew up with synthesizers. So, to write my piece, I started out with Widor's Toccata, or rather just the tiny snippet from it that I played during the demonstrations. I transposed it into the parallel minor to give it a whole new character, and then wrote an original melody in the left hand and a chord sequence. The music develops into a middle section, which incorporates Widor's motif as a repeated carillon. And finally, by retuning my instrument to the same pitch as the church organ, I can incorporate both instruments in the recording. I'm going to end by performing this new piece in full. It's taken me a long time to write it, so if you enjoy it, then perhaps watch it again, or make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Or if you really enjoy it, then you can leave a small PayPal donation using my link below. I would be incredibly flattered if you thought that there was a camera crew and a producer helping me with these videos, but I stress there is nobody except myself. I'm the person who does all of the filming, all of the performing, the writing, and of course the editing, which takes much longer than the filming itself. So if you'd like to support me, then click on the link underneath this video. That takes you to my PayPal donations page, and from there you can leave me a small contribution if you'd like to, and I'd be supremely grateful for that. Thank you. So, I'm not very good with titles, so perhaps while you're listening to this you could help me out in the comments. But in the meantime, here is my new piece of music, composed at Longbridge, Deverill. And I say, as always, thank you for watching. Cheerio.